5 cards or archetypes that I want to see come to Magic the Gathering's Historic format. Historic is a relatively new format to Magic Arena that came in to allow players to use all of the cards that they had prior to the first standard rotation in the game, along with an additional 20-some cards from Magic's past. These new cards allowed for many new decks to be built to bring more diversity to the format. It helps to make sure that the format feels unique and is not just a slightly stronger standard. The last Historic set brought in some powerful cards such as Phyrexian Arena, Burning Tree Emissary, and a whole slew of tribal support for the Elf and Goblin tribes. Out of all these new cards, the one that has seen the most success has been Burning Tree Emissary. Gruul Aggro was one of the most played decks in Historic, and this card is definitely a major factor in that deck's success. A Zhur-Taa Goblin on turn 2 is pretty good, but a Zhur-Taa Goblin that was cast off Burning Tree Emissary is representing a whole lot more damage the next turn. Now, the next Historic collection isn't coming out until after Core Set 21, and the ranked play function has been currently pulled from Arena until closer to the Kiora set. But I still hold out hopes for this format, because with Brawl only being playable on Wednesday, then this is really the only other alternative format to play in case of another toxic standard format. But without further ado, let's start off with the list of cards that I want to see in Historic with number 5, Werewolves. The original Innistrad block introduced flip cards in the form of werewolves, and the Shadows over Innistrad block introduced even more of these two-sided creatures. While werewolves aren't as blitzy as Historic's current Gruul Aggro lists, they do hold a neat place in Magic's history, and cards like Duskwatch Recruiter and Arlinn Kord all have effects that would allow for a more Gruul mid-range type deck. The Arlinn that we got in War of the Spark wasn't very good. In fact, it was probably one of the worst planeswalkers in the set. But the original Arlinn was a completely different story. On one side, it made a 2/2 and boosted up a creature, and on the other side, it had the ability to bolt or pump the entire field with trample. The reason that this isn't really further down the list is because it's really more of a flavorful win than with something that would probably see a ton of new decks coming into the format. And as a fail case, it probably would just end up in the sideboard of Gruul Aggro lists. But number 4, Ninjas. This is another archetype that I would like to see come to Historic. I'd love to see a sizable ninja lineup on Arena, but if I had to pick one, then I'd probably just say Ninja of the Deep Hours. Ninjas are an archetype that dates back to the days of Kamigawa block, and they have the unique mechanic ninjutsu attached to them, where if a creature that you swing goes unblocked, you can pay the ninjutsu cost to swap that card for the ninja in your hand and place the other card back into your hand in place of that ninja. While coming from a less than popular block, ninjas do have their place in Magic's history. Ninja of the Deep Hours saw a lot of play in Pauper inside of Delver lists as a means of card advantage. But there's a plethora of different ninjas, each with their own unique ninjutsu payoff, that would make for an interesting package to include the next Historic collection. They would probably need to put at least 2 of the good ninjas in, like Deep Hours, Ingenious Infiltrator, or maybe something like Fallen Shinobi into the set for people to really build a ninja deck out of. Though I think it would be fun and decently competitive, and not something that would break the format. But if they did want to break the format with ninjas, then all they need to do is toss in Yuriko from Commander 2018. And if they just ended up putting in Deep Hours, then I think it would be fine, and that people would play it inside of mono blue tempo lists as another way to draw cards in a deck that already can hit with evasive threats on turn 2, and already likes drawing cards to begin with. That brings us on to number 3. Hidden Stockpile. While not really a historic card in the way of its age, this card is very versatile in what it provides for the Historic format. There's a sore lack of good token decks in Historic, and that's mostly the fault of high power creatures that are available in the format, and the relatively low amount of good token generators. Outside of Castle Ardenvale, Legion's Landing, and History of Benalia, there aren't many other good token-making cards in Historic. And all of those cards really only see play inside of mono-white aggro. Hidden Stockpile already has one of the colors that's all these token generators already in, that being white, and it fits in with some of the standout cards that are already in the Orzhov colors right now. Hidden Stockpile isn't just a good token build around, it also works in a Sacrifice shell. Sacrifice Aristocrat decks that exist right now are currently either in Jund or Rakdos colors, so it would require a bit of a different build, but with cards like Cruel Celebrant and Corpse Knight, and also having access to the Witches of an Cauldron Familiar combo, I think that having Orzhov and Mardu Sacrifice would be a pretty good addition to the format, so that you're not just stuck in Jund and Rakdos. And Sacrifice isn't the only deck that could try to run it and do it effectively. Decks like Doom Foretold would majorly benefit from getting this card, because getting down multiple 1/1 tokens off of each of your sacrifice triggers per turn would really help the deck win against its worst matchup, that being aggro decks. But let's move on to number 2. Delvar Secrets. I wanted to put this at number 1 because if we're talking historic cards to the game, then Delvar Secrets is easily one of the most noteworthy cards in the entire game's history. It's a titan of Legacy and Pauper, and it was running rampant in the standard of its day. Though it's that same potential power that makes me keep it only at number 2. Right now, I don't really see a deck that really wants Delvar, except maybe Tempo or a control list that wants it as a win con. The main issue, though, is that when Arena's card pool grows, the power of this card would also grow. Delvar feasts on options, and the more good instants and sorceries there are, the better he gets. Though I think as Arena stands, he'd be a fun build around to have a different type of tempo deck with. And I also think that the sheer amount of removal also keeps him from ever getting out of hand. And that's why I think Delvar Secrets is a card that I really would want to see in the next historic set. Let's finish it off with number 1, Zur the Enchanter. I thought long and hard between Zur and Estrid in the Masked, and it became pretty obvious that Zur was the more flavorful of the two than Estrid. Theros Beyond Death just came out pretty recently, and with it came a ton of new enchantments. With Zur, you can search out any of these enchantments that are CMC 3 or less. That means stuff like Prison Realm, Glass Casket, Phyrexian Arena, Banishing Light, and Underworld Dreams. There are a plethora of interesting ways to build around Zur, such as a control cell or a control shell with Zur as a way to search out finishers or removal. You could have Zur stacks. And finally, with something like All That Glitters, you could have a Zur Voltron deck. I think that Zur is a very solid pick for Historic right now with the new set, and it's definitely one that I think is a right mix of power, historic value to the game with how much it's played in Commander, and the relative creativity that it would take to build around him. But that's all I have for today. Hope you all enjoyed. Have a great day.